Michelle, welcome to the
Thank
Moderns.
you.
Thanks for joining us. Congratulations on what I guess is your debut LP, Late
Hmm.
Morning, and and
Yes,
and that title has to do with a kind of theme on the record, as I understand it. Can you tell us about that?
sure. So late morning, it kind of started with this. That's kind of like my time of day because I'm sort of a late riser and night owl, and I've always been a bit of an anomaly, like in my family in that sense, um, and so it's always been a source of like judgment a little bit, this idea of like kind of being behind and behind schedule, and in a way I feel like in my life this it's kind of taken me a while to get this album out, but I think the perspective of something like this being late, I think the title is meant to kind of celebrate the right time for something, and that whatever presents itself, you know, in a compelling way, when that presents itself, it is the right time, whether it's, at a late hour or at a or whatever age it may be or whatever, So in my case, I think it was kind of a long journey to get here because I was classically trained as a pianist, and and while that gave me a lot of great assets as a musician, it kind of set me back creatively for a time, and and after my undergrad, actually took a while off of making music at all, because I felt a little bit suppressed or like confused about it, and uh, but and did some other things with my life, and which were all just great and part of my path. But anyway, yeah. So late morning is just kind of like celebrating, the individual story of however long it takes to get somewhere and how the time of arrival is the right time.
I should say it's your debut LP, but not your first recording.
Right.
A
Yes.
three-track EP
Hmm.
and one or two singles as well between
Yeah.
2019 and now 2020. I guess uh, the string quartet piece was released. How's the music evolved for you, even in that relatively short period of time over the last few years?
Um, I think since Mills, I just feel like my Mills was a wonderful time of experimentation and kind of immersing myself in the work of others and learning a lot of new things, and then since that time I feel like I've just been able to digest all of my influences from various parts of my life, and kind of like form them into something more personal. I feel like that's kind of been the theme of the last few years, is kind of like distilling all of these different things and making them my own.
Was that the time when you came to study with John Bischoff?
Yeah, that was during my time at Mills. So that was 2018 to 2020. Yeah. So I was maybe more speaking about the time like from 2020 to 2024 when I was kind of making this album, even though some of the writings and some of the compositions had started to germinate before that, but I feel like they kind of more took on their own identity in the last few years after Mills.
How long did you find it took to absorb the teachings of John and I imagine the influence that he had on you? Oftentimes that, it doesn't happen right away with a
Uh-huh.
teacher or a mentor. You kind of have to process
Hmm.
what they've offered you. What was your experience like?
Um, Yeah, John is just, have you met John or are you familiar
No.
with his music at all? Yeah, he's just a really wonderful teacher and a wonderful person in general. He's just like a really, really sweet and encouraging man. And so he was just a great teacher to have in the sense that he's a he's mastered his craft and has a very highly developed um, sense of style and aesthetic, but also he was really really skilled at working with students and kind of allowing them to do what they needed to do and kind of working within someone else's set of strengths and not kind of like projecting his aesthetic too much, which I think is a really difficult line to toe. But yeah, I mean, he's just an incredible performer, and just so working with him, I became really interested in doing synthesis in Max MSP, and kind of got more excited about that. I have some hardware synths, but because I'm a pianist, something with a keyboard interface was always like a little bit, okay, now I'm playing the piano and I've got chords and, you know, harmony and all these considerations that I needed to just kind of get out of the way so I could just focus on timbre and, you know, kind of put my piano brain aside. And so working with Max MSP became really useful.
It fascinates me, this aspect of your music, that you have this classical training, and then you have this opportunity to work with an absolute pioneer in computer music.
Hmm.
And so the depth of musicality in both of those, the background and then the influence, for me, it's quite nicely balanced in your work. To
Hmm.
me, it's very much electroacoustic work performed from a place of classical training. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does.
Are you
Yeah.
conscious of that when you're recording? I know you both improvise and compose.
Hmm.
Um, are you mindful about it? Do you do it very purposefully to bring those two influences together, or how does it come more organically for you?
I would say yes and both. Like, I feel like I'm just kind of the preferences that I have, are ingrained from like all of the music that I listened to when I was learning how to play the piano and through college and like the pieces that I learned. So I was really into Debussy and Ravel and the romantic composers, and I still listen to that music often. And when I'm writing something, I'm kind of always referring, I'll like listen to, my favorite composers still like Messiaen, and I've been into Bartok lately. Um, and I just find that like that's where I get a lot of ideas that way. So yeah, I mean it's both conscious and unconscious. I still kind of like it's still feeding me in a conscious way, and I just find that like referencing those artists is just like continues to help me so much.
And you do still perform and record solo piano pieces. Nest on the new album is one of those pieces.
Hmm.
Again, a conscious effort. You want to maintain that as part of your library, or what drives that for you?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think I do. It just feels like this part of me that will always be there that I don't want to relinquish. Um, so I don't know exactly what's coming next. I mean, if that is the only solo piano piece on the album, but a lot of my ideas start on the piano, and then sometimes they take off when I have another sound world that I bring into it, and then they kind of pair off and become something together. But sometimes, like in the case of that piece, I just feel like it was strongest to just be left alone and to be simple, you know? So I still really appreciate the simplicity. I mean, obviously, it can get very complex too with solo piano work. And hopefully, I'll always still be making that kind of music too, you know?
What drew you to electronics in the first place? And was it a gradual process or was there a kind of epiphany at some point?
Um, I think I was always drawn to it, but I didn't really engage with it very much until later, until probably, well, I think part of it was the tools, you know, like I was mentioning earlier, having synthesizers and always feeling like this other part of my brain would kind of interfere with the process because of the keyboard. So, but I felt like, you know, the draw was strong enough that I just kind of kept searching for the right tool, you know. So I think it was really the finding that helped. But also, you know, I took a class before I went to Mills, I took a class in San Francisco at the community college from another Mills alum that taught that. And so it was kind of like the Mills and going to see shows at Mills before I went to school there too. So it was like the Mills world was definitely beckoning.
Yeah,
But
what's it like there? We've heard so much about the college. What is Mills like?
what is Mills like? Well, it's changed now because it was bought by Northeastern, which you may know. Um, so the music department there's not actually a master's program there anymore as of very recently, which is kind of this uh, tragic thing. So, but what was going to, yeah, I mean, going to school there was just like really, really wonderful. It was, it was very challenging, but it was also, sometimes it was just like, you know, I had to like pinch myself because just to be in the environment where where like you're being challenged to come up with, to kind of engage very seriously with very strange ideas, or you could kind of have some just like very peculiar artistic aspiration and people will take you like deadly seriously. You know, it felt just kind of magical to be there. And yeah, it was only 2 years, but it felt like this like enormous chapter of my life.
Hmm.
And I feel like most of the people that I was surrounded by felt the same way. And I'm still in close community with a lot of those people here in Oakland.
Brianna, one of those people, Brianna
Hmm.
Marcella, who mixed your album.
Yeah.
How do you enjoy working with her?
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's wonderful and we're really good friends. And she just has such an impeccable ear. You know, she's like so incredibly um, highly developed in her in her sensitivity. So yeah, it was an honor to work with her.
I also noticed that Taylor Dupree mastered the album for you.
Hmm. Yeah,
Fascinating artist. Has done
yeah.
such amazing work. Um, was he did you choose him? Like how did he come to work on the record?
He has worked with Brianna before, so I kind of ended up going that direction because of Brianna. I actually had another master done before that, um, and decided to get two masters done and chose Taylor's. You know, it was just being maybe being a little bit neurotic, like wanting to be absolutely sure. But the album has a lot of bright frequencies and like percussive sounds, and so I found that like the first master I got kind of accentuated some of those, and Taylor's sort of mellowed everything out and darkened it in a little bit in a way that I didn't really know that it needed until I heard it. So yeah, I was really grateful to work with him.
I was also very interested in the notes, your reference to electroacoustic systems.
Yeah.
What are you expressing there?
Well, in the software that I use, a lot of those pieces were created from some system that I made in Max, whereby the the signal, what from whatever instrument I'm playing, whatever keyboard instrument I'm playing, is being fed into the system and interpreted in some way where there's a there's a response that I programmed. And a lot of this has to do with going to Mills, but I was kind of, my aesthetic was definitely influenced by people such as John Bischoff, who are kind of into indeterminacy and spontaneity and performance. So the way that I programmed things always had some range of possibilities that weren't completely predetermined, you know? So it was kind of like a range of things could happen, and and that would then elicit a response in the moment where I kind of had to listen and respond, because maybe what I what I had written ahead of time wasn't working because the system was kind of giving me something that I wasn't expecting. So I kind of had to shift direction, and I've just found that to be kind of a fun and exciting way to work. And that definitely came from my time at Mills, just that being kind of indoctrinated in that way with live electronic performance aesthetics. But so that's what I mean by systems, just in terms of like, there's a range of possibilities.
And is that where improv meets composition for you within those systems?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I never felt very comfortable improvising, like in performance, with before this album, when I would play solo piano shows, it was always like thoroughly composed every note, and that's kind of what I felt comfortable doing. And I do still like performing that way sometimes, but I just found that it just didn't always work with it. So it was almost like out of necessity. I kind of wanted to try to do that because that's what I'm comfortable with. But then I found when I was working with these other sounds and these other systems I was making, if I stuck to the script, it often wouldn't sound great because I wasn't really listening or responding in a way that was necessary. So, yeah,
That's wonderful.
composition and improvisation. Composition is still, I still do very much like to start with kind of like, at least on the piano end, I often have like pretty specific, motifs that I'm working with and things that I kind of bring to the table. But
You
I, yeah.
thinking about new music all the time?
Yeah, yeah, I am. I'm kind of always like tinkering with something. So I find that like there's different phases of creativity, and you know, I try to just be allowing of those different phases. Sometimes I'm just like, I try to write music and nothing's really happening. So I try to allow myself to take breaks and do other things, engage in other types of creativity if I feel like that's just what's necessary sometimes. But yeah, I always have some sketches and ideas that I'm working on, and I'm just trying to be more organized about it these days and really keeping track of things. But
What's next for you?
um, well, I feel like I've been kind of writing a little bit more music for synthesizers, like I was saying earlier, like the thing that I didn't want to do is kind of what I'm coming back around to. And I have this Korg Poly 6 analog synthesizer, and I've been writing more composed songs for that, which has been really fun. So yeah, that's just what I happen to be tinkering with right now. Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for your questions.